over 300 dance troupes in Egypt. Just only two of them are very famous inside Egypt and outside. They affected the other dance troupes as well as Oriental dancing and belly dancing. Let us see now their stories and see exactly also how they affected our Oriental dance and belly dancing. Since 1950 until 1959, a lot of dance troupes appeared in Egypt. One of them was very famous in Alexandria, which belongs to Nelly Mazloum. Nelly Mazloum tried to create a wonderful choreography. It belongs to the theatrical folk dancing. And of course, she did a wonderful types of dances. Nelly Mazloum, was not Egyptian, but was from Greek. Her family came to Egypt since long time and they lived in Alexandria. Same as many other families, they came from Greece and from Italy. The main point was that her type of choreographies was not 100% Egyptian, or the feeling was not 100% Egyptian. But we loved it very much. We loved her types of dances very much. Other side, Nelly Mazloum studied also the classic ballet, which she tried all the time to use many dance steps from classical ballet during or through or inside her choreographies. 99% of her dancers, they were also not Egyptians. So it was something little bit missing in this time between her types of dances and the Egyptians' mentality, or let me say the Egyptians actually. So they loved her very much, but for in the other side they found that it is little bit strange or little bit not Egyptians. By the way, she was the sparkle to let me actually study dancing and try all the time to be a good dancer. I tried to meet her, but what a pity I haven't choice to meet her through or during her life. After that, around 1959, the wonderful dance troupe appeared, which belongs to Mahmoud Reda, who created his dance troupe when he created the first choreography, which he traveled by this group to Moscow in a festival, try to show exactly in this competition how the Egyptian can dance and what type of dance they can do. In the beginning, Igor Masayev came to Egypt and tried to find one of the groups or choose one of the Egyptian groups can presented Egypt in Moscow in this festival, and in the end he chooses Mahmoud Reda with his group, where 4 persons only or 4 dancers only. They went to Moscow and it was a lot of problems in the beginning until they finished their show. And the show was only one dance, one type of dance, which he called it, I think, Ayazin al-Abidin. Yes. And was a little bit strange that he got the third in this time over there. When he came back again to Egypt, he decided to create a dance group in Egypt, a complete dance group in Egypt. In the other side, the government were looking in this time for dance groups can present them everywhere all over the world. For this reason, the state helped him to create this group. By the way, Mahmoud Reda published a book talking about Reda Troupe from the beginning until he published this book. And this book is very rare also, but I have it in my home library. And he wrote every single point about his group from the beginning until he published this book. He explained exactly how he created the first choreography, which he danced over there in Moscow, and later what he created in Egypt when he came back. In this time or during this time, Egypt was a communism regime, which have a strange, or let me say a special direction. They tried after that around 1960 to take him through or during or to their directions, but it was a little bit difficult for him. For this reason, or around maybe 1961, the government tried to find another group or to create another group to achieve their required direction. For this reason, they created another group, or they asked the Soviet Union helping them. Igor Masayev came back again to Egypt, and he tried to collect some dancers to create this group, but the problem was that they need exactly to travel everywhere all over Egypt, study the Egyptian mentalities and the societies everywhere all over Egypt. Same as Mahmoud Reda did in the beginning of his group too. Let me tell you, in the beginning Mahmoud Reda found that if he wants to create the correct theatrical folk dancing, he has to study the mentality, the Egyptian mentality right well. So for this reason he traveled with his first group to many cities all over Egypt, collecting the music, songs, and many different types of dance steps, which helped him in the end to create all these wonderful choreographies during this time long ago. The same after that when Igor Masayev came to Egypt, and he traveled also everywhere all over Egypt collecting the same dance steps, music and songs. But if we make a comparison between both of them, immediately we will find that the group which belongs to the government and the Soviet Union, as let me say something like that, they have a special school, which it means exactly they use the muscles much more than to use the feeling, and vice versa with Mahmoud Reda. Every dance step using muscles, but sometimes I can use much more power with my muscle than the feeling. This is the difference between both. At the same time, Russia was famous for classic ballet, and the classic ballet in this time was wonderful. If we make a comparison between the Russian classic ballet and the European classic ballet, immediately we will find that Nelly Mazloum created her dance steps with the European classic ballet, but Kaumiya troupe completely different, because the Russian classic ballet is different, same as you know. But anyway, that was the school of Kaumiya troupe in the end. Kaumiya, it means exactly national group. And the other side, Mahmoud Reda, when he created his group, he tried to find a name. So he gave this group his name or his family's name, Reda Troupe. That was exactly the difference between both. Both of them created for us wonderful many different types of dancing or theatrical folk dancing. And of course, people in Egypt loved them very much, but we were much more, or the Egyptians were much more close to Reda Troupe because of the feeling, what I told you. The other group was wonderful, but the feeling was a little bit lower than Reda Troupe. During this time in the 60s, the belly dancers found that a lot of Egyptians love very much watching Reda Troupe and Kaumiya troupe. For this reason, the belly dancers began to use some of their steps in their choreographies to let much more audience coming to them or watching them. This is exactly what the beginning or the sparkle of the Oriental dancing to appear on the surface of the arts in Egypt. Of course, the government found that it is wonderful to use them or the regime found that why not, if they can use them through their achievement directions actually. So they tried in the beginning to use both of them, but they found in the end that with Kaumiya troupe much better than Reda Troupe, because Reda Troupe play onto the feeling, as I told you. So they tried to ask for much more Russian experts, I mean choreographers coming from Russia, and try to create much more choreographies belongs to the regime much more than to the Egyptians. This is exactly another point for the politic in this time or during this time long ago. At the same time also, they found that it is important to create or to build a culture houses in Egypt which can achieve also their directions or way of communism in this time too. So this was also the beginning to a lot of dance troupes appeared in Egypt. By this way, around 300, or the beginning was a step by step until it became 300 or over 300 dance groups in Egypt. Every group belongs to the city and they created their type of dances which belongs to the people or to the group of them. But suddenly was very strange. The government asked some dancers from Reda Troupe and Qawmiya Troupe to go to these dance troupes everywhere all over the Egyptian cities and teach them how they can create or do their dance steps, which in the end affected them by Reda or Qawmiya system. This is exactly the point which I feel sad, because in the end they became, or most of them became, a copy of Reda group or Qawmiya troupe. All these dance troupes in Egypt born for us or brought to us a wonderful female dancers who some of them changed it from theatrical folk dancing to be an Oriental dancers, which helped them, of course, helped these females to create all of these wonderful types of Oriental dancing in the end. The problem in this time that the female dancers, they has to move out of these dance troupes to be alone and to do these types of dancing, what they did in the end. Of course, this is exactly the beginning of the Oriental dancing to be much more famous all over Egypt, and step by step the belly dancers began to change their way to be Oriental dancers, and they come back again to be belly dancers, and vice versa. The Oriental dancers changed it to be belly dancers and come back again to be an Oriental dancers. This time, exactly as I told you, it was the communist regime. So for this reason, helped them or helped all these dancers to appear on the surface of the dance art in Egypt. At the same time, also began another dance groups to be famous, such as Ismailiya dance troupes and many other dance troupes too. But the main point is they were a little bit copy of the other two famous dance groups, as I told you. But it helped the Egyptian society to have many different types of dancing, and of course let people have this wonderful test. If I want to watch the way of Reda Troupe with the feeling what I feel exactly and exactly much more close to me, I go to Reda Troupe. Or if I want to see the wonderful theatrical folk dancing with wonderful power and I feel much more close to the classic ballet, I go to Qawmiya Troupe. The same time also appeared the classical ballet in Egypt because of the Russian in Egypt, and this time they helped the dancers, some of them, to be or to go study the classical ballet. All these points helped the dance art in Egypt very much. But the regime in this time was looking for something special, how they can let people be with them all the time. For this reason, they used the folk music and songs to help them or to let these people look at the government as this position, the highest position. But of course, they need the female to play inside in a dirty game or something like this. What you understand me? Actually, for this reason, they used the belly dancers and Oriental dancers in this point exactly. So now if we look at Egypt, we will find immediately the ballad, which it is exactly the folk music and songs, which can explain much more about the regime, and on the other side we can find the theatrical folk dancing, which can present Egypt all over the world, and in the middle exactly we can find the belly dancers with the Oriental dances, who the government will use them in many dirty ways, same as I told you. Some of them, they went through this way, and some also didn't do something like that. And let me tell you that some of them escaped outside Egypt because they don't want to be under hands of communism in this time. But anyway, this was exactly the story in this time, which helped actually in the end also dancing to be much more famous and let people love them very much. The main point is, as I told you before, and I will tell you now, people in Egypt were looking for belly dancing or Oriental dancing from this little window or closed window, which exactly this type of dancers or this type of dance, it is not belongs to the Egyptian society. And of course the collective thought changed it to be against Oriental dancing or belly dancing, also because the dancers, when they're going to dance, they show much more parts of their bodies, which the Egyptian in this time were looking at this way exactly. They scared from these dancers. But in the other side, when they found that Reda and Tamer troupe created all these wonderful types of choreographies, which they liked very much, so they found that this way changing their minds exactly to these types of dances, I mean theatrical folk dances. This is exactly the points inside this story. And in the other side, the classical ballet began to appear in Egypt. In the beginning, Egyptians dislike it because they don't understand exactly the meanings or the story, which they has to study it before they watch the dancers. But step by step, many Egyptians understood exactly what's going on in front of them, and the society in the end agreed to watch this dancing and became a wonderful, or the government created a wonderful classical ballet group in Egypt. But 99% of their dance steps or their way of creating their choreography belongs to the Soviet Union in this time long ago, and still, by the way, until now we're still thinking the same, but they changed some of their ways to understand exactly much more about the ballet or the European classical ballet. So now we have mixed between the Russian ballet and European ballet. Yes, also one point I love to share with you too, or I love to explain to you too. In the beginning, Mahmoud Reda with his dance troupes, the system of Mahmoud Reda was European, same as Nelly Mazloum, but not 100% European as much as it is Argentinian, because Mahmoud Reda was dancing with Argentinian or studied with Argentinian group in Egypt, and he traveled with them over there, and he studied also the way they created their, or how to create their choreographies. This is exactly helped Mahmoud Reda in the end to create his way of dancing. If you look at the line of all of these countries, in this line, for example, you will find immediately all these people all over the globe live in or around this line exactly. You will find them dancing the same, not same like the North people or I mean the North societies or the South societies. This is exactly helped people to understand, or helped us to understand the difference between the dance steps or the choreographies everywhere all over the world and where it comes from. But anyway, if you look at the Argentina exactly and Egypt, you will find exactly they are close to each other during this line of the globe. For this reason, when Mahmoud Reda created his dance choreographies was close to us, same as I told you. But the other dance group, I mean who studied from the Russian, was much more strong and very fast dance steps, which belongs to the cold areas exactly. So we feel wonderful, but we feel strange a little bit because it not belongs to us, as I told you. This is exactly another point we have to keep in mind when we're going to study the folk dancing in Egypt. Step by step, or later, some dancers from Reda Troupe and Troupe also they changed and became an Oriental dancers, and they created for us wonderful choreographies here in Egypt. We love them very much. This is exactly the story of the Oriental dancing and belly dancing, and how these two groups affected them in the end and led the Oriental dancer to have its place on the surface of art in Egypt. Of course, I will explain to you much more during my next videos about these points exactly, or deep inside these points exactly, to let you understand much more about the Oriental dancing and the belly dancing in Egypt. Also, I love very much to see you once more again in my next video, which will be with you and also I will be with you. Thank you very much, and see you in the next video.